Alrighty, guys, we're here with Mort.
Yeah,
we got Chris.
We did it.
We got ourselves some Rick,
it.
and we got Ricky. And if you guys don't know Mort, it's obviously Mort's Garage, and we're here with my boys, you know, so you know how we go.
The squad has assembled today. Mort,
Hey,
you're here.
I am.
Welcome. So officially on topic, Mort, we're very professional here. The first topic we have is, would hoarding collectibles be considered an investment or a problem? Now, before we answer that, tell the audience that doesn't know you, why are you here? What do you do? What the heck are you on our podcast for?
Yeah. So, is there a camera that I should be looking at?
All of them at once. Triple cross-eye.
How you doing, people? I started doing YouTube after a couple of things. Number one, I was a part of Pixel Game Squad for a little while. Yep. And before that,
then we kicked you out.
Couple episodes of Retro Liberty. No, people have said, why don't you do Pixel Game Squad stuff anymore? I'm like, just creatively, I wanted to do all the stuff, which you can see on my channel, and we weren't really able to do it. That was right around the time when the algorithm, you were really kind of going, all right, I need to maximize my time better.
Yeah.
And so you really started focusing on hunting videos. And I was like, what about this thing called Garbage or Gold? Or what about this other thing? And you were like, seems cool, but I don't know. And then I was like, I just have to do my own thing. But I was terrified of doing my own thing. And then, but there's this creative part of me that exists, that has always existed. I've always been in bands, always done that kind of stuff. But after years of playing in bands, my ears got blown out from tinnitus and not taking care of my ears.
Yep.
And then my kids, they got cast in the film Asteroid City. And that for me was like, that was like being awake in my dreams to be a part of that experience, because I don't just like movies. I'm a cinephile. Like, I love films. So when my kids are very active in the entertainment industry, they've been on about 10 or so different TV shows like Shameless, Jane the Virgin, Grey's Anatomy. They've been on Grey's Anatomy for like 7 seasons as Meredith Grey's daughter.
The one I know that's their longest running, right?
And while this is all going, I said to my wife, wouldn't it be crazy if they got in like a Wes Anderson film? And then I got a voicemail from Wes Anderson on my phone. I was like, oh my gosh.
I remember when you told me that.
I was like freaked out.
Yeah, you couldn't even get your sentence out to me.
I could not. Yeah. And so we ended up there, and I came back. I was like, I need to do something creative. And so I started talking to you more and saying like, hey, like, what are you using to edit on? And then I edited a video of my family just to kind of see if I liked it. And I was hooked from moment one. I was hooked. I started posting videos, started posting a lot of extra stuff, and it's now built to a channel that's really active. Yeah. I've been able to, honored to be a special guest at a couple of different conventions. I've been able to have all of these incredible experiences on the channel, and I'm just, if it feels like it would be cool, I'm doing it. So yesterday, I had a video post with the lead singer of the band Thrice, Dustin Kensrue, and that was super rad and fun. But it's also kind of like, this could be, there's just lots of directions that this can all go. And what I love about YouTube is I can really take this in so many different directions. So a lot of people knew me before as a guy with a lot of video games in his garage. And so the name Mort's Garage just sort of naturally fit. Mort is from the film Waiting for Guffman. Yep. And so it just kind of all fit. And I was just like, all right, I'm in. I'm like fully bought in. And now this has grown so much to a point where, professionally speaking, I'm transitioning over to doing this full time. Yeah. Where like I'm like doing creative direction with other brands, doing advertising.
I use an example a lot to people when people are like, I'll talk to my wife, like someone who's not involved in like the YouTube space or doesn't really care about that stuff. When she's like, how do you know if like somebody's good at editing? Yeah. And she's like, do you know? Asking me. And I'm like, I use you as an example all the time. I'm like, Mort's one of those guys I knew immediately when he started editing. I'm like, okay, he gets it. And it is interesting. We have a very similar background before this. Grew up playing in bands my whole life, like creativity, like it's weird. Yeah. Those are just kind of two things that connected us, aside from we went to the same high school. A Christian high school. Yeah. Chris applied, but they said we don't allow Satanists. So they didn't let him. Go ahead, Curtis.
Now, how many doors would you say that YouTube has allowed you to kind of open?
A bunch. I don't know why that's funny, sir.
I'm still laughing about that last comment.
It's just so quick, man.
If you were a song, you'd be highway to hell.
I went to Catholic school and all that too. So
did you really?
My mother was a CCD teacher, so I went to regular public school, but I did go to catechism school. So
Good for you.
Catechism. I don't know what
CCD
that
we
is.
called it, like catechism school.
That's awesome.
No? Yeah.
Wow. I
All
didn't
right,
know
just
that,
need to
man.
make that known.
Okay.
Is that where you like collect bones or something?
We make jokes about it to Chris. I'll
Hold
check
on.
you know.
Is this a Christian YouTube channel or is this Christians who are in a YouTube channel?
You know, it's all of the above.
I'm just joking.
We're a squad, right?
Yeah.
That's
We're
like
a
when they say
squad.
about Christian music. Like, is this a Christian band or Christians that are in a band?
We,
You know, like,
I mean, we could
Skillet.
care less about what you believe. I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah.
But we believe what we
no,
want.
no, I think this is the most dogmatic section of the internet. Right? Really, I mean, this is a very. I'm kidding. This is not at all. But this is you being in YouTube. I think what's been the most exciting thing about the journey for me is. Like, I have a lot of anxiety, as you guys probably know. And
Sure.
It's a joke for anyone who doesn't know.
Yeah. And I've worked through a lot. I have a great had a great experience in therapy. I'm very positive about therapy. It's changed my life in so many ways. But one of the things that I think a lot of people feel when it comes to anything creative is what will people think? And I kind of got to this point where I stopped caring and I started thinking, this is something that I feel. This is something that I believe in. And I'm going to go for it. I'm going to just see what happens. And because of following those instincts and just letting myself go with all of that, it has opened up so many doors in a way that's like, I would watch other people do YouTube and go, I wonder if I could do that. And now I'm doing something where I look at it and go, I'm proud of that. Now I want to make the next one a little better than the one I just made. And that attitude keeps going. And now it's like, it's crazy to be at a point where like really well-known brands are saying, create advertisements for us or create content for us. And what's cool is there's two kinds of roads that you can go down at this stage. One is just being an editor, which is really tough because AI has made that more challenging than before because AI has automated so much of it.
Yep.
Or be a creative director, which is to say, I have a concept, I have an idea, let's edit it this way. And what's fun is being able to just go, I think this would be really cool. Let's try this. And then for it to work, it feels really good. And I say that with just a sense of satisfaction, not in the sense of I make things that are, better than something else. I just am really thankful that I get to make things and that I get to try things and that works. So it has opened so many doors.
So we connected with you originally because you were like the N64 guy. Like it's kind of like how we knew you. Like, hey, you're the guy with the complete N64 set and it was all in the boxes and we were all blown away by your garage. Ricky is somewhat always jokes are thrown at Ricky as being a hoarder. You own a store, you're an investment guy. Ben is 100% scalper. So we all kind of have our.
Hey, by the way, for anyone who's watching, Ben is one of the nicest guys in this community.
We've said
I just want to make that really clear.
Yes, he is.
In my storage video, you literally hear me when I close the door. I'm like, Ben, you stupid idiot. And I literally immediately go, actually, he's like probably the nicest guy I've ever met. He's just such a nice guy.
Even if you ever need something, Ben will always be there for you. That's how you know he's a nice guy.
I need an anal
He
exam.
deserves the love. He's an unsung hero.
I need an anal exam after this, Ben.
But let's talk about hoarding.
Yeah, I was going to say, for the audience who clicked for why we originally got here, let me ask Ricky first because I'm curious. So our original topic, but we wanted to let Mort, explain why he's here. Do you think hoarding collectibles, a lot of us can be accused of it. There's all different ways you can say you're a collector, whatever. It doesn't really matter, collector, reseller, whatever. Do you think hoarding collectibles is more of a good investment or a good problem or a problem?
So I've been doing it for a while. You know that. So the one thing I notice is, especially with collectibles, they take up a lot of space.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're really thinking of like collecting just to like do a locker and collect all your collectibles, it's a waste of money. By the time you're done, like paying off all the rent or whatever you're using for it, it evens out. And you're like, dude,
Curtis
come on, Curtis.
No, I mean, like, you got to think about it like this, okay? You have thousands of items, right?
Yeah.
You have to literally take that amount of space that it's taking and divvy it between thousands of items. It's cents to the dollar per item. So it doesn't really make sense to take up your home if you have
like me, I have shed, so it doesn't matter to me. I'm like, oh, I have the shed. So
are you out of space though?
I'm almost out of space.
Yeah, he's almost out of space.
Definitely
I'm out of space. And when I pull out stuff out, some stuff went up like an insane amount, but there's stuff that I'm looking at, I'm like, this went up like $5 from 10 years ago.
So that's my biggest gripe with this. And I'm probably calling out myself, everyone in this room, the audience. I'm aware, but there's so many times, and I've been so guilty of it. And I'll be honest, I make a good living now, is what I'll say, right? So I think of money a little bit different than I did back in the day. When I would go to conventions or stuff, someone's like, dude, it's crazy, dude. I bought this game like 5 years ago for $50 and now it's worth like $200. And I'm thinking, $100 is a horrible amount of money to make in a year and a half from that investment, right? Like there's so much that I know I could have put that $100 into and made $100,000 off of it in a certain amount of span. So I know there's a lot of things that I wish I would have known back then. And I'm not saying it's bad, because there are things that do spike a crazy amount, right? Where you're like, dude, I bought this comic and it ended up being this rare thing that's worth 200 grand now and I can sell it at an auction. I just think I'm a little turned off by I saved it and it grew $12 in value in the past year. And I don't want to wait till I'm 50 to cash out $400. You know what I mean? Not
more like the quick flip method is almost like
I've definitely a quick flip guy. Give me it now, and then I'll buy that something else, invest it in something else.
I'm more of an investment guy, because if you take that analogy that you said and it went up, say $50 on something, right? But if you have 1,000 of those items,
yes, I agree,
and they went up $50,
yes,
I think that's 50,000, or is that 5,000? I don't know, but it's a pretty good return.
Then it gets better. I agree.
So I've always been in a whole. I've become
speculator. You're a speculator.
But I found out early on that space is the biggest problem.
100%.
And so I started just buying and collecting and hoarding, if you want to call it, or investing, all of those things.
A little bit of all.
Just the top end of every category.
To be clear, before the podcast started, you told us you were buying up every copy of Rollerblade Racer on the NES.
That was a different thing. That was a market manipulation experiment. That's what that was. I wanted to see if you could control the market on a certain game, and
we're so canceled, bro.
But I did try doing that. Not anymore. But we were talking about Rollerblade Racer on NES, and it's a pretty rare game, actually. But it's cheap.
I'm curious on your thoughts, Mort, as a collector as well.
Okay, when we had this question posed, I was thinking of it one way, but now it's going another way. Okay. So I had all of these thoughts formed about it the original way. First of all, you just don't know. You can't speculate. You don't know
Chris,
when a game is going to go up and when it's going to not, and how much it's going to go up. If we all knew that buying the recent Final Fantasy VII Intergrade, I think it was, that came out, was going to explode in value by what, like 400% or 300%?
Yeah, I think they're selling like what, $200 to $300.
$200 to $300 now. Sure, we would have all bought it. But like, we don't know that. Most Square Enix games, usually you buy them and then they mass produce them and they're $10-$20 for a very long period of time after it has its initial release cycle. So I think you just don't know. What I take issue with is this term hoarding gets thrown around a lot. And I think that there's like an actual clinical application of that term.
For sure.
And we use it in a way that almost feels like almost in a playful way, but in a way that's like kind of like, get the attention off me, you hoarders. Like, so for example, it's almost like showing up to the bar and you being an alcoholic and going, what are all these alcoholics doing in here? And like, it's kind of a way of like, that's a good analogy,
It's actually funny. So that's a very Simpsons. I could see that in the Simpsons somehow.
Yeah, but just as a way of saying, like, I think like I look into my own self and my own habits and think, well, I don't know that, like, as a hoarder person, it's not interrupted my relationships in a way that's damaging. I've not gone into debt over my spending habits and collecting habits. So I don't think the term hoarding is right. I think the term accruing is the more accurate word.
True.
And we're accruing this stuff. And then it leads me to this like existential territory. And in my brain, I'm like, okay, what am I accruing all of this stuff for? Like, there's a lot of things you can accrue in this world and in this life. And the things that I'm accruing, what gives me the best investment, not only monetarily, but in other manners, emotionally, spiritually, all that kind of stuff. Because anytime you devote to something, anytime you say yes to one thing, you're saying no to something else. And so I think it's more like accruing things is the better word for collectors, because that's what we're doing. We're going to the swap meet and we're accruing all of these items. And hoarding is kind of a funny way to joke about it. But ultimately, and there's people who are really struggling with that. And there's something important about that. But really, when you think of like what it means to accrue something and to spend time and storing it up and then hoping that it has value, I think then the conversation becomes a little less hyperbolic and a little more literal and a little more accurate. And then I'm like, oh crap, I am accruing a lot of video games, and I do have a lot of video games in my possession. To what end? Now, the other problem is this. I think you can invest in this because this whole thing, these video games have changed. The essence of what it is that we're going after with video games, they have changed from being video games to being collectibles. And that's something that I think is a real pain point for a lot of our friends, And those that are not in an area where we have swap meets where every weekend we can find the stuff at below cost.
100%.
If you're in the Midwest or other places where the weather forbids weekly swap meets, finding this stuff is really hard to do. Mm-hmm. And I think that can kind of leave people going, like, being really frustrated and seeing all of this other stuff happening that we're finding all of these things. But ultimately, I think it just, when you change the terms to being about accruing and investing and all of that, I think then it gets just a little more, I don't know.
Ricky's a hoarder.
I'm a hoarder.
No way.
See, look, I hoard because I like this stuff. Like, I love it. Like, don't go out there and just buy like stuff when you think it's going to go up. I just buy it. I'm like, oh, I like it. Cool. Let's get it.
Yeah.
But like, I go for it.
But if it had, I think the key thing is value. If it had no value, would you still buy it? Like, would you go out and collect leaves?
Mid-low trash
leaves or something that has no value.
Ricky and I pick up some pretty dumb stuff.
We do pick up some
most people don't care about.
But I think the reason we buy video games and this stuff is because of value is so important to it. Mm-hmm. And I mean, if you were buying stuff all the time and it was going down in price, would you continue to buy it?
Right now, we're going for NES set and it's kind of going down, but I'm enjoying buying it.
Right. Yeah. So there's a couple things.
Because
with it. One is the collectability of buying this stuff.
For me, the NES thing is purely like an attachment to what that console is. Like right now, I'm not caring at all to collect anything else. Like everything else is just for sale, so I can buy.
And you're not doing it for the value of. You're doing it because it's the complete collection and it's fun to do.
That's right now. My brain has a heart. I'm pointing over there because they can't see. That's all my NES.
He's just pointing at me. It's okay.
just. You know what I learned from that whole conversation? Mort is way too smart to be on our podcast.
Yeah. I would say that he put a little bit more thought into it. You know?
He's smart. We're all. He's like, actually, guys.
We use generalized terms just to put everybody in.
He's a smart man for sure.
Hey-o.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Are any of you guys stock guys? Does anybody buy stocks?
I have stock.
You do?
I do stock.
Anybody buy stocks?
No, I'm a pension guy, you know.
You do. So like stocks, I would like use the analogy, like stocks, you're investing, right? You would all say we're not collecting stocks, right? But it takes up no space, which is nice. Yeah. But when I look at video games and other collectibles, what I see is like, I can go buy a stock for like the average price of a stock might be $100 to $400, right? Then maybe $50 to $200, right? So it's comparable to like what a video game might be worth.
Or Bitcoin.
But that's
Bitcoin's $70,000.
Retro Rick's channel tells a lot about Bitcoin MicroStrategies.
They did. Yeah, I actually unsubscribed to his channel because of the direction that it took.
But when I look at collectibles, to me, it is like another investment. But there's one thing that's different between buying stocks and buying collectibles. Buying stocks is not fun at all.
Yeah.
Like there's no.
I think some
if you're a
like
stock guy, I mean, I sit on my phone on Robinhood and sometimes I'm buying stocks, but I'm like, there's not much.
Oh, that's why. You got to be like what you see in a movie, like a giant, like or just a robe on a giant landscape of on your home on your computer, grids going off the side.
No, it's literally just on your phone. Like, oh, Amazon looks good, Google looks good. Yeah. But when you're out hunting and buying games, like there is so much more fun to that.
For sure.
And when I'm buying stuff, and I like to see like accruing, like you said, but I like to see the appreciation and value. Yeah. If I was buying all this stuff and then it was depreciating and be like, well, what am I doing this for? So I do think the appreciation and value. That
right there is the thing that I think, keep going. I'm sorry. Keep going.
But the appreciation and value, like if this stuff wasn't going up in value, would we still be buying it all the time? I've maybe if you were playing every single game,
right?
But I think that you have to account for some of the appreciation and value and stuff is why we continue to collect and buy this.
But that right there is, I think, the reason why people feel so angry and upset is because some people think I'm buying a video game. Some people go, I'm buying a collectible. A collectible is anything that has more value than what it is originally worth.
Agreed.
And so anything that so I'm exploring on my channel right now. I'm doing this series where I'm trying to find the last thing for my N64 set which is the manual for Clay Fighter Sculptor's Cut. It's a like $5,000, $6,000 item.
It's crazy. Costly. I already bought up the market, man.
Yeah. Thank you for that. So, but what I'm like, that's a weird thing. Like what, like with you, like right now, it's strange to buy all of these games that you will likely never play all of.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing.
I try to play them though, but yes.
But it's a weird thing to get all of this stuff. And so then I'm like, I'm going to use this on my channel to go through. So every week on my channel, there's a new something about collecting that I'm trying to go. It's like the one that I'm editing right now is about like define the collectible and what makes something have value, and trying to kind of really just like analyze this in myself, because I think it's also analyzing our community as collectors, not just gaming collectors. This is everybody. Like people collect classic cars. like no one is collecting a graded comic book because they want to read it. They're collecting it. You collect comic books.
I do.
And he grades them.
But so I think a lot of people feel burned that like, oh my gosh, these aren't, I thought I was buying a video game. It's like, no, you're buying a collectible. You can play your collectible, but it's ultimately a collectible. And that, like it or not, I think is the part about this that makes it so, brings about so much anger towards everyone, because I think a lot of people are seeing people buying collectibles and it's like, you're buying this thing that meant a lot to me in my childhood and you're exploiting the value of it and calling it a collectible, and it incites all of this rage. And it's like, whose fault is it? It's these people's faults and everything. And it's like, I can't control that necessarily, but I don't know. There's a whole road to all of it.
I agree with all of that. And where it gets messy is it does, like when I first started reselling video games, I think people looked at me as like extorting or like misuse. Maybe extorting is the word. Like their childhood.
Exploiting.
Thank you. Not extorting. Exploiting their childhood. And that is where it gets messy. But that's a good point about it being an actual video game versus a collectible.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. And ultimately, a lot of people, when they're hunting, they're playing with those definitions where they're like, is this person selling a game or a collectible? And sometimes people have different definitions of what those things are, and that's up to you watching.
100%. Everyone's opinion, view, hoarding, collecting, reselling, scalping, acquiring, all this, what it's worth, the nostalgia value kicks in. It's going to be up to each individual person. Yeah. You're never going to see a comment section where everybody's unanimously like, that guy does it right.
But there is something objective though here, which is that no one is spending over $2,000 on a single cartridge because they want to have the experience of playing thing. If 100%. You could play it through any other means.
Absolutely.
And in fact, a lot of the games on the eShop, if you wanted the physical copy of them on the Nintendo eShop, you'd be paying hundreds and hundreds of dollars for some of those games on the eShop, I think, like Earthbound. Is that on the eShop?
I don't know.
I don't even know.
Okay. Anyway, supposing that it were.
I only play physical now, man.
Yeah.
Just physical NES for sure.
But I think, I'm not casting judgment on
for sure.
us. I'm usually casting judgment on myself and going like, why do I do this? And I think that's ultimately the better thing to do, is to look at your own habits rather than to judge everyone else's.
And I still think that we've talked about it on here. Is there is a gray area where I think you can be still, and we've said it many times, like you can be a gamer and love video games and play video games and be a collector and a reseller and all of those things and an investor and do all of them.
And we know
it doesn't have to be one camp and the other.
And we know that because we do it.
Right.
That's just the reality of it.
I think those black and white categories of are you investing or are you hoarding? Well, I mean, maybe it's a little bit of both. Like maybe, and like I think you brought up a really good point of like, I wouldn't be buying this stuff, especially at the volume that I am, if it was going to go down in price, every month or whatever. But that's just a really tricky thing that's a messy thing to kind of get into. So.
Yeah. And I think like another way of thinking about it, if you're like self-aware of it.
Yes. You
know what I mean? Like when you're collecting, I feel like hoarding would be like, you just have no concept of like how much you actually have.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, usually we're driven.
That's literally Ricky.
No concept of anything yet.
No concept of what he has.
Like you. Oh, I don't know what I have.
Yeah, we literally make this joke at his when we're doing the Whatnot show, and if anything falls behind the desk, it's gone forever.
And hoarding,
and don't look either.
When you think of like the hoarding TV show, right? Like when they go into those people's homes, like the hoarding that they did,
roaches,
it's like garbage bags and like food containers. It's like garbage.
That's what I mean when I say
it has no value, right?
There's like a clinical element to hoarding as opposed to accruing, which is collecting.
Yes, I'm not a hoarder.
So I would not call you a hoarder because you still.
Before you move on, I have to say this one thing.
You cannot. No, so you can do whatever you want to do, man.
We can move on. It's okay.
No, we can do. Come on, we're having a great time. Let's go.
I think the last piece of this is, and I've been studying this because I've been doing advertising with other folks, is that people are driven emotionally to make a decision, and they make the decision, and then afterwards they justify it rationally. And so like if you split those things apart and start looking at what's the emotional thing driving this, and then what's the rational justifications that I just used for that, I think that gets into really interesting territory. And I wouldn't tell you how to think about it or feel about it, but it's worth self-exploring.
Boom, 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 boom.